What's going on, guys, and welcome to today's video. I want to talk to you about some axles choices that I have ahead of me, and then I also got a chance to run a really nice 2014 ZL1, had cams, is 93 octane, and it runs faster than I do in the 8th mile, so those are some pretty good runs. Last run at the end was with the Shelby GT500 that hopped in there, a 20, I think it was a 2011 or 2012, I don't remember. He had a lot of 14 stuff on it. Makes a little more power than I do, but I also couldn't hear go, so didn't get a chance to run them. Maybe next time we'll see what happens. Definitely some good time. All right, now what I want to talk about with the car, and that is axle stuff. So this is going to get kind of nitty gritty. Before we hop into it real quick, I'm going to sit down to the car and show you what's going on. So let's talk about axles in this car. Since I last made a video on this, I was definitely very wrong. I basically stated that the stock axles, I haven't heard of them breaking often or anything like that. Well, I looked that up and that was completely false. They're all over the forum. Stock axles in these cars suck. How I haven't broken one at this point, I'm going to leave up to the bias plies absorbing the hit, and maybe I just got a factory freak strong axles. I don't know. I know they're still stock. They haven't been upgraded from the previous owner or anything. So here we are. Now, I've narrowed it down to basically, there's about 3 paths that you can take, 4 maybe. There's a couple different paths you can go. So the strongest path right off the bat is going with a 35 spline axle from the 31. This is a Ford 8.8 diff. It has a 31 stock for this generation of Mustang. Other ones not so much, but this one 31 spline. They're a pretty good axle. However, in the factory, they're not that strong because the core is a soft metal and the outer is hardened, sometimes not evenly all the way through. And it's basically, it's a cheaper steel. It's an inexpensive factory axle. They used a 1340 rated steel, which is a little bit stronger than the general, like I think it's 1040 that comes in a lot of stuff. And basically it's pretty low on the list. I'm going to throw up a chart that's going to kind of be up here as I'm going to go down with you guys. The first ones I ran into, I hopped on Lethal Performance looking for upgrades, and the one I saw was the Moser 31 spline axles. So they are a 1541 rated steel. Basically, they advertise as about 30% stronger than stock. The upside, Moser is a well-known brand. The stock ones on this car haven't broken yet, so I'm probably not pushing them crazy hard. However, we're doing 1.63 60 foot, and I want to get down to the 1.5 range. So we're going to be pushing them a whole lot harder when I up launch control, and that's something to keep in mind. I don't know. I believe that they would be a lot stronger than the stock ones. Obviously, better material. They're 1541H, sorry for a little bit extra hardening, basically. However, what I don't like about them is that they're not the strongest. So I hopped onto Strange's website. They also sell axle packages, and they sell, it's a slightly different material. It's a 1550, which the 50 and 41 at the end of those has slightly more impurities in it. And from what I understand, it's going to be a little bit weaker, which is weird to me, but maybe I'm missing something. I don't know. But the 35 spline is going to be a lot stronger. I don't want to go 35 spline because the cheapest package you can get is a spool with 35, and the problem with, and it's still about $700-800 bucks. And I just put a new diff in this car a little while ago. I used the Eden True Track. It's 31 spline. I have no intention of putting a spool in this car because I enjoy driving it on the street, and trying to drive around corners with a spool, it's just not cool. It's not a track only car. I enjoy this car both on the street and on the strip. So that leads us to the next option. This was also on Strange's website. It is called a high tough. It's basically an extremely strong alloy in terms of strength when it comes to launching and absorbing a hit and then continuing to get back to its original form. It is very weak in terms of like lateral movement. So if you're riding around on the normal roads, you hit a pothole, it's enough to actually fracture these things, and you'll break an axle. So that's also out of the question, because I can't go that strong and then risk breaking it trying to run around. This is, again, not a trailer only track car. So I don't want to go that far into the 31 spline world where I don't get to drive the car normally without risking breaking something catastrophically. Now, I found an interesting, I decided to hop on Rock Auto, which I never do for the Mustang parts, or the GT500 parts, because usually they're just very basic OEM stuff. I ran into something a little different though. Spicer from Dana, I believe that they are a partnership program. They make a lot of stuff for the Jeeps and off-road applications. And they just happened to make one for the F-150 rear axles that also fits perfectly into the Ford 8.8 rear diffs that are in this car. They use a 4340 rated chromoly. And the chrome, it's a nickel chromoly, and that is the actual true alloy. And it's actually a way stronger than the 1551 or the 1541 I was looking at earlier. It's also a few steps down from the high tough and 1443M, which is basically the same thing with more silicone added. It becomes even stronger and is also much more difficult to make. So this is where it gets interesting, right? The problem that I have with the Spence, so I'm going to wind up getting the Spicer axles. The problem is I cannot find anywhere of anybody running the Spicer axles in this car. I can't find it in the GT500, in the GT. I don't even see it like in general getting run on anything other than Jeeps because they make other stuff. So the 4340 chromoly is a lot stronger than the 1541 basically hardened steel, and I believe from what I'm understanding it's a couple steps down from the high tough, so it shouldn't be as brittle. And to further back up the brittle point, these things are literally used in off-roading applications. And I don't know about you guys, but I do go off-roading occasionally, and trails and whatnot are way more hard on axles and stuff than regular roads are. The amount of bumps, rocks, and crap you hit, if it was going to break laterally, that's where it's going to break at. So that gives me a little bit of confidence. I did shoot myself in the foot. I ordered the ARP studs for these. I returned them because I was planning on going with the Mosers, and it looks like I'm going to need to go back with the ARP again. The reason I returned them is the Moser takes a 6.2 or 0.625 size diameter press in, basically curl, and the stock ones are a 0.615, so they weren't going to fit, and it turns out I need them again. So that's pretty much everything that I've been researching about axles with the car. I also need to strengthen up the diff. I'm really kicking around of how I want to do this, so that's another interesting point. So the differentials on these, I started looking into welding the diff and found a lot of forums on it, and some are great. Some people weld them just as a precaution, but they don't push the car. And here's where it gets sketchy. A lot of people that do weld them and push the car, some people don't run a brace. I'm running the Shy Performance Brace, SHE. And so this is where it gets interesting. I have not heard of any, there's been like 1 or 2 accounts that I've heard of people wrecking or breaking their rear axles, not the actual shafts, but the actual 8.8 axle between the pumpkin and the tube with the Shea brace on it. So it's pretty good. However, the Shea brace in welding is better. Or is it? The more I look into it, the proper way to weld these things, you have to take them off the car, you have to bring them to a shop, they have to put them in a jig to make sure that there's no stresses on the axle tubes in relation to the pumpkin, because they're not perfectly in there. They do move around just a little bit. And for instance, if you jack it up with the car on it and the springs are pushing down where they're not usually pushing, you can actually have a slight warp in the axle tube to pumpkin alignment. When you weld it together, you put it back down, you try and launch on it, it actually makes it worse. One, you just heated up that material so the seal's not as good anymore. And if you don't get proper penetration, there's a lot of factors that make the welding option kind of sketchy, and I'm not super about it. So what I've been looking into that is actually very well proven to be just as strong, if not stronger, is actually called pinning your axle. And what you do is you pick about 3 points around each tube, and you drill a hole in it, you take a very fine threaded large bolt, you tap it, not with the bolt obviously, with a tap set, and you screw your bolt in, you find the right length, you trim it, And basically what you're doing is you're putting that bolt in between the axle housing, the pumpkin housing, I guess, and then the axle tube, and it sits flush on the inside of that tube. And what that's going to do is put literal pins, basically the bolts, that'll keep that thing from rotating in there. And that's one of the very proven ways to keep it strong. Let it have its little bit of tiny movement that it may need, so that when it does bounce around, it's not going to snap anything and become catastrophically way worse. And pretty much that's one of the best ways to get it strong. So I think that's the route I'm going to go with this thing. I don't know if I'm going to do the pinning immediately. I do want to do, definitely going to do the axles before I take this back to the drag strip. But we'll see about that pinning thing. It's going to be a real bitch of a job, to be honest. I need to be able to basically pull the whole axle out, clean everything, and I'm going to basically pull it off and be able to do it anyway, that outside of the car. It's going to be a real pain in the butt. However, at the same time, I also don't want to freaking, you know, destroy the car with a freaking rotated rear axle. So I'm in a little bit of a situation with this. Kind of sorry for rambling there. So the way forward probably is going to be pinning, and then the Spicer axles with ARP wheel studs, and I think that's going to be about the strongest I can make this 8.8 diff. I mean, you could always weld it on top of doing the pinning, but I don't think the welding is going to be necessary if we pin it properly. It's going to be just as strong, if not stronger. So just to back up part of my reasoning as to why I'm not really too sure on the welding, a lot of people that have broken the welds attribute to those broken welds to use superheating the metal, it becoming dislodged, and then the welds aren't done properly and it'll snap the welds off, and that's the only thing holding it. So sometimes it is stronger just to leave it alone with the diff brace. So the plan forward is going to be going with ARP wheel studs. We're going to be doing the 4340 nickel chromoly axles from Spicer, and then eventually we're going to pin this thing when I really want to get serious with 60 foots and get it down. I might do it while it's out, however, just due to the amount of labor involved to try and get to it, I'm not totally sure. The Shea brace has been known to really help out a crap ton with this thing, especially the way it's set up, to help with the anti-rotation issue. I read one person that's had a problem with it. For the most part, though, people have been able to cut some pretty wild 60 foots. We're talking like 1.4s and 1.3s without welding it, and it's been fine just running the BMR brace or the Shea brace. So I think I'm going to hold off on that just a little bit longer. When I get a house that has a garage and I can pull this whole thing off and really go through it, you know, top to bottom, I'll probably do it then. But for right now, I think this should be good enough. So that was a lot. Sorry for rambling to you guys about this whole thing, but I thought it was interesting and I wanted to get that information across to you, as well as kind of bounce ideas, see what you guys think. So that's kind of where I'm at with the situation. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you found it interesting, awesome. If not, we're going to be the test mule for this setup. If it breaks, I mean, you'll be the first to know. More content for me and money to spend on broken parts. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Hopefully we'll be installing all this crap and seeing how everything goes. Take it easy. See you in the next one, and let me know what your thoughts are down below. I'll see you around.